And we're back once again with the Think Fitness Life podcast for our 16th episode, talking about programming and the bigger picture to it all. We have your hosts, myself, Matt Gluckman. We got Eric Menchie and Mike Urso over there as well.
Hey, yo.
And we have an announcement from Mike. And then I just want to mention next week we'll be talking about breathing. And once again, we have no emails to read this week, but think fitness life, all one word, at gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, pictures of dogs are also accepted. Again, thinkfitnesslife at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys, our listeners, get to know what you guys are thinking and what you guys have questions about. So feel free to write us. And go ahead, Mike, with your announcement.
Well, I came across these two different apps in the App Store, and one is called Soothe, the other one is called Zeal, and they are essentially on-demand massage therapy that can, come to your home. So you know how you can queue up Uber and basically send your coordinates, and they can have somebody come and swing by. This essentially kind of works in a similar way, whereas you can, basically dispatch a massage therapist to come to your home. They bring the table, they bring the oils, everything. And you essentially can book somebody within the day, in that same day, to come and give you a massage. And I thought that was pretty interesting. There's not a whole lot going on with that. And as you guys know, I work in the home fitness kind of industry. And I would think that there's a place for that in my model, where we're working and coming to people's homes and doing training. But I'm interested in what you guys think about, I don't know. I don't have any stats or any data on if this is something that has taken off or if it's been well accepted. I just feel like massage is one of those things where it's extra touchy, no pun intended. But in a way, where you're inviting somebody into your home. I don't want to say it's an intimate experience, but it is fairly intimate, to have a massage. So I don't know how that would go with a complete stranger. I mean, it's one thing to go to an establishment where you can look in the window and see oh, they must be a legit place, but maybe if the massage therapist had ratings like they do on Uber and customers can leave a rating on them, which I don't think the app has, or I don't even know if they're going that direction, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I think it's really great in the sense that there's a lot of people who undervalue massage and how much it actually can help with what we've talked about in the past, which is chronic stress from, busy work life, kids, all that other mess. And allow for somebody to come to your home where we don't have always time to travel to places or, money to spend, on a service like that. You have to have a membership to it maybe as well. So this could be a solution for that, to get into people's homes to do, some sort of recovery therapy, whatever you want to call it.
Is it a company massage therapist, or do they kind of contract massage therapists?
Yeah, I think they're independent contractors as far as I know. So they're not affiliated directly. So they're not directly employed by the company. They're, I would imagine, just independently contracted from what I understand.
I could see that working out pretty well if you have an established base of clients and, they're more comfortable having, you come to their home. That's where I can see it can benefit a lot of massage therapists. But I agree, if you're just out there and hey, let's click on this person, I don't know anything about them, and it can be kind of weird having them come to your house. I also think sometimes you go to massage place and it's a certain setting, music and all that stuff. I just wonder how the quality would be of the massage.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a very specific ambiance that's created when you go to a spa or a massage therapist office. It's really zen, and you would think that you'd have to create that environment when you go into someone's home, and you don't really know what you're walking into as a massage therapist who's dispatched to come there. So that's interesting. I didn't think of that.
I don't know if you guys had an experience with um, what's it called? Thumbtack or
Yeah.
findyourtrainer.com or fitnesstrainer.com. Do you guys ever use those?
I would,
Yeah. I
yeah.
haven't
Okay.
used them. I've our company is on Thumbtack,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm familiar.
So I do think it's going to be dependent upon how the revenue structure is, because um, I feel like it makes or breaks you, just kind of how it's set up. And I've had a lot of success with, um, I think it's like findyourtrainer.com, but with like fitnesstrainer.com and with Thumbtack, like not much success at all because they charge me. So it's like I have to kind of hustle more
Hmm.
versus the people who are seeking the service. And I would have to look at the app more, but I feel like it's a really good potential to find those hidden gems of therapists, and obviously it's going to be the good people are going to thrive on this application, and the bad people are going to get weeded out pretty quickly, because when you do good work and you have a good profile and you have feedback on your profile, you just look busier and you look more reputable and you look more trustworthy to invite into your home. Or if I'm somebody who's going to be inviting someone to my home. But yeah, I do love the idea that, like you were saying, some of the busy schedule, or maybe they have to be home for kids getting dropped off from school or something like that, whatever it may be, that time constrains them to having to be home more often
Right.
than not. That's definitely a solution for it, for sure.
And maybe some people are just more comfortable in their home and they just want to get a massage there in privacy. But I can see both sides where it can be awkward and all that stuff. But I think it'll be good for a lot of therapists to kind of get themselves, I don't know, not on social media, but out onto the net where they can really network and, kind of create new business.
Yeah, I
The
feel like
thing and these like organizing applications, quote unquote, is there's nothing proprietary about them. So it's just like so many pop up left and right. And it's like there's too many chefs in the kitchen. So there's never ever one go to and leading company or app that can fulfill the needs that everybody goes to when they have this thought. So you know what I mean? Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely innovative in regards to like using technology to deliver services to people at a more convenient area or place. And then I know like Soothe specifically uses Apple Pay integrated. So like once you book a massage, your total comes up. You can pay right there from your phone with Apple Pay if you wanted to, which is also nice. It's a little bit more secured. So they have some good integration for that. But I think it's still at the very beginning stages. It's kind of TBD to how it's going to go, down the road, or how they, um, market it, because it's not really something you're hearing about out there. It's kind of, you hear about it through somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's a lot of these fitness apps that are popping up now. I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago that said, you can find open trainers around the city at different clubs and different locations. So you can kind of pick and choose daily if you want. It's sort of like class pass, but it's with training sessions alone. And then you can add a
Hmm.
couple other people into it to make it like a group training session. So I think the apps are trying to get really big into the fitness industry because I think they know that they can try to drive some kind of profit.
Yeah, they're getting better, and then Nike training app is pretty good. They actually have a good array of programs that you can do. Like for example, they have like a full body dumbbell circuit. So like it's a full workout with dumbbells, or mobility, um, lower body, upper body, all sorts of different workouts for runners, which is pretty cool. And they take you through the whole like warm up sequence, main set of workout of like strength training, and then like conditioning stuff as well. So they're actually really much more up to par with like what we may be doing in the strength and conditioning environment.
Now, is that a free app, the Nike one, or is that like a monthly subscription? Or
No, as far as I know, it's free.
wow,
Yeah, and they have like you can filter based on how you like what kind of workout you want by muscle group. If you want to train like an athlete, if you don't have any equipment, if you're crunched for time, you can filter out like a whole bunch of different stuff, and it's just a whole bunch of free workout plans.
now does it come to a point where, and I know we're going to talk about this in a second, where you kind of meet an ends of their programming, and there's an advancement of, or you have to purchase further on to get more in-depth programming, or is it kind of like one basis they're kind of rolling off it, and then they're going to kind of roll out another template down the road of a more
Yeah,
complex?
I think it's more limited in a sense of it's kind of like Beachbody. So
Okay.
you get like a whole bunch of different workouts and programs, but then, once that program's over, it's kind of like, where do I go? I guess I just start a different program. There's no kind of, as we said, we're going to segue into here, like any kind of periodization at all, you know?
And I think that's what I find tough with a lot of apps is that it lacks periodization, and it lacks that almost human backing behind it, where someone has to program for 4+ weeks that someone's going to progress through these levels, rather than just here's a workout, quick on an app, subscribe for it, or it's free and just go do it. That's where I would assume that they see a lot of people just fall off after a while.
Yeah, there's one app that I have found that is a periodized, like a customized periodized program, and it's called Volt Athletics, and it's great. It is though geared towards athletics and athlete style of training. So it's not like your regular kind of Joe Schmo going to the gym, wants to just put on size or wants to lose 20 pounds or get cut. It's pretty much like you pick a sport that you want to train for. You pick basically when your season's going to start, and then it'll periodize for you to peak right during your beginning of your season, and then it has like more of a maintenance type of training program throughout your season. So you have a start date, end date for your season, and then it's like off season workouts, and it basically 365 days, 12 months of periodized programming through
Wow.
different phases like strength, power, hypertrophy, strength endurance, power strength, and so on. So really cool. It's about $10 a month. They actually have what's great about it is the rest timer on it. So once you log, how many reps you did with the weight, and then there's a demo video right on the screen for that, and then you hit next. It goes to your next workout, and as soon as you log that workout or the movement you just finished, it starts your timer. So like say it's like a 60-second timer, and then that timer will go off, and then that's when you start your next set or your next exercise if you're supersetting. So it's really they've thought of a lot to
That's
really
probably
like yeah, it's there's a whole lot of they've taken out of your hands, and really it's just anybody can like take this and follow along.
Well, that's probably the most in-depth one I've heard, because the biggest thing that most programs lack is
Progression.
periodization or any kind of progression, regressions of, you know,
Yep.
exercises. And that's where I think a lot of, when Matt said this a while ago, is that where a lot of these apps will fall off. And that's why a lot of the human interaction, the personal training, the one-on-one, the going to people's houses is more important, because they can get a sense of why they need programming and periodization and how they can implement it, where you see it on a screen and people don't really realize, they just see numbers change. They don't understand the complexity of it.
Yeah, how many times you guys, I
That's
mean, you guys worked in gyms for years now. How many times have you seen that same guy comes in on like Monday evening at 6 p.m., puts, a 45-pound plate on each side of the bar, starts benching for 3 sets of 10, and he's been doing it for like the last 3 years, the same weight, right?
oh, a lot
How
of
like
people.
yeah, and they stay, and they're going through that same routine. There's no periodization. They've never like put on more weight and done like a 5x5 or a 6x3. It's really like everyone's working in that like 3x10, 3x12, and then I'm gonna do drop sets at the end, or rest pause, and it's like all these advanced things that they haven't really even structured their program to go through different types of phases of training to create a different training stimulus.
Well,
And we see it all the
there,
time.
that's a different type of person. honestly. There's going to be people who are hungry, who strive for more, who hit a goal and think, what next? What should I do next? There are people who I don't know how to really describe it except for they're combating their own guilt. Like they do things just so they don't feel bad later. Like they go to the gym for 20 minutes.
They're
30 minutes.
extrinsically motivated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
They're like,
but they're motivated, but they're just full extrinsic.
Yeah, they're like they're on their phone. They, like they didn't really come to work out. They're just at the gym. They pay for their gym membership. They might even pay a personal trainer, but it's just so that they don't have that responsibility on themselves anymore to feel bad. And like they know they're not going to get worse by going home and drinking and eating sugary stuff and ordering pizza because they keep going to the gym every day. They're never going to get
necessarily going to get better either.
Right. And they won't get noticeably worse until it's almost like not too late, but it's like, until
the elbow tendonitis, sank in because of all the volume they've been doing for, multiple days a week, benching twice, 3 times a week.
Whatever it may be, they lack that idea of, no, this is not just something I'm gonna do as maintenance so that I can keep an unhealthy lifestyle. I'm striving for more. I'm trying to have a happier lifestyle. I'm trying to have more energy when I work out. I'm trying to be able to, when my kids get older, keep up with them. Like there's just such a different.
How old are they now?
Personality, and he's about 10 months actually. He'll be a year and 2 more months. But I can't keep up with him anymore. I've noticed that cardiovascularly, I'm a little bit weaker. And thank God the heat came out because that makes him have to cool off and hang out in the shade. I only have fur children, people. I don't have actually any
real hairy kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a super hairy kid. But yeah, like I just think that's sort of the difference in that mindset there, that psychology there about what they view the gym as, and to the people that do look for results. The application piece, back to the apps, like if I'm an app designer, the hardest thing in designing a templated 12-month program is getting feedback from individuals. I really only see it being tremendously effective in getting people to exceed even their own expectations for themselves if there is a better feedback system, whether it be, all right, in phase 1 you need to hit 1.5 times your body weight for this exercise, you need to be going up 50 pounds in this exercise, and you need to be doing this. Like if they have like stipulations, then if you don't hit them or you only hit like a certain percentage of them, then they adjust how your program's progressed for the next phase. Or maybe there's even somebody on a live video feed, like when you, because sometimes you pull up like Microsoft support and someone will, a little pop-up will say, hello, and I'm hanging out here waiting for you to text me for support if you need me. Like if there's somebody like that for live feedback, but you'll never get out of the need for that human interaction, that human awareness and looking into things. And thankfully so, because that'll make sure that we have jobs. But I think what's important to mention this still is kind of like the best of the best that's out there for those people who maybe don't have time to get to a gym or don't have you have an idea where to look for when it comes to deciding what program to follow. That Volt Athletics that you said, the one I mentioned earlier, Softlete, Softlete, and what was the other one? He said Zeal.
Excuse me. And Soothe.
Yeah, I feel like those are 4 good applications that are. Or no, the Zeal is the programming one though.
Oh, sorry, right? No, Zeal is the massage one. Nike was another one.
Okay, so yeah, the Nike, the Volt Athletics, and Softlete are, if you're somebody who doesn't know where to look for your programming, those are good places to start.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, when you get someone like an assessment or an eval and they kind of go over, their past program, where do you kind of start with them and educate them on what they're possibly doing wrong or incorrect, or where they could be doing stuff better?
I'm going to actually flip that question back to you because I'm not an expert. You guys are. No, I'm just kidding. But, um, you know, I'll ask them what they're doing for their exercise history. Usually, you know, what have you been doing in the last, what has your exercise been like in the past 3 years? That's where I start. And then based upon there, um, I may or may not dive into what their individual workouts look like. If they are consistent and have been, and they can really break down how their workouts go, like Monday through Friday, then I will go into more so like exercise selection and how they break down their day or their workout day. But for the most part, I mean, everybody that I sit down with is pretty um, consistently inconsistent with their gym going routine. So um, I just kind of I assess in the first session, in the first workout. We do some sort of knee dominant, we do some sort of hip dominant, we do some type of pull, we do some type of press, we do some type of stability core movement or core exercise, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, totally. And for you, Mike, when you and if you guys out there haven't listened to episode 8, go check out episode 8 with interview with Mike because he does a home fitness. When you do at home stuff, how do you kind of address that with new clients or potential clients?
Like essentially, where do we enter them into that training program kind of
Yes.
spectrum? So yeah, it's about kind of finding a, you know, essentially I look at it this way. I want to know obviously what their goal is. That's the biggest thing. If we don't have a goal or a focus of training, like what are we training for, then we have really no direction. And then back to what we've said in previous episodes, we need to find some sort of deeper seated reason of why they're doing what they're doing. I want to attach it to some sort of emotional connection because that's going to get them to really be much more motivated and inspired to want to change. Um, and then from there, it's really finding out what they want to get to. What is that outcome? What does that look like for you? So that's their kind of point B, right? The place they're headed to, and then their point A is like where they're at right now. So and that you just look at a couple different things. You look at their movement quality. We look at essentially like aerobic ability. So maybe a step test if we're in the home, where we may have the ability to do like set a metronome and do like the 3-minute step test. That works really well. We can gauge their heart rate pretty easily. And then from there, we may do, like I said, movement assessment. We do a posture analysis, anything like that can look at your orthopedic, static posture, dynamic posture, orthopedic history. We're taking a look at all those things. And that's going to give us kind of like, this is where you are right now at this time. This is your point B, where you want to be. Like, this is the picture of what you want. And here's how we're going to connect the dots. And so that's up to me to decide, how do we draw a straight line from where you are now to where you want to be? And I'm going to give them, there's no such thing as like a linear path to anything. Nothing. There's no such thing with life and how everything gets in the way. We have to come to the realization that there is going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be, backslides, all those things. We have to prepare for those ahead of time and know how we're going to get back on track if we do, kind of fall off track. But then when it comes to setting up the program, you kind of have to look at the person and say, like, what is their lifestyle? How, if it's an athlete or a student athlete who can train 5-6 days a week, then I'm going to, throw the kitchen sink at them. If this is, a finance guy or, a woman who works a full-time job, has kids, it just really doesn't have a lot of time, then I'm probably going to say, what is realistic that's going to fit in your schedule. And then, depending on, let's say that's only 2 days a week that she has to work out, or 3 days a week, then I'm going to base my program on how frequent she can get a workout in. And then, if it's 2 or 3 days a week, it's probably going to be full body style workouts the entire time. I'm not going to split it up too much at all or vary, the style of training that we're doing all that much. because that person just needs to kind of get that foundation and get some consistency kind of rolling with them.
Before we go off on really overgeneralizing, let's start breaking down some of the specifics and some of the absolutes to programming, right?
So get into it.
Let's start with movement patterns. What movement patterns do you want to make sure is in every single program?
Yeah.
Just shout them out there.
Yeah, we hit on this a couple weeks ago when we talked about the deadlift, right? Well, that's a prime movement, the hip hinge.
Hip hinge, squat.
Hip hinge, squat, any kind of core bracing or stability.
And now, what would be a difference between a hip hinge and a squat?
So a hip hinge would be a movement where we're primarily looking at the hips shifting posterior, meaning like you're flexing at the hip and your hips are shifting straight back towards the wall behind you as your torso kind of folds forward, but your spine remains erect. Whereas a squat is going to maintain a much more upright spine position, and then the hips are going to drop down between the feet, and we're going to get knees, ankles, and hips all flexing and extending through that pattern. So squat is more of like a straight up and down movement. Deadlift or a hip hinge is more of a posterior shifting back of your hips and then forward shift back.
Thank you for explaining that. And then hip hinge, squat, we have a lunge pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should be familiar with that. And then we have a step up pattern. That's also important.
Yeah, some sort of pillar strength or I would call it pillar strength for as a more like umbrella term, but more specifically planking or variations of planks. That's going to be an exercise like a plank, for example, that's going to carry over into every other exercise. So, for example, when you finish a deadlift, when you finish a squat at the very top and you lock out those positions, you finish in a plank position every single time.
A standing
plank
right.
position. So a plank is an absolute foundational movement to me.
Dude, I did a standing plank for like 2 hours the other day. No, I'm just kidding. Bad joke.
Horrible joke.
It's just funny how you're like, it's a standing plank. I can just see people thinking like, oh man, plank? I could just do it standing. Then you want to have some type of row or pulling exercises for strengthening your back, more of your posterior chain. And you want some sort of pressing exercise.
And anti-rotation.
Very so now
important.
we're talking about planes of motion. Okay, so we have movement patterns. We kind of covered our foundation for programming for movement patterns. Every program should incorporate some variation of all of these movement patterns we just went over: hip hinge, squat, lunge, step up, pillar exercises such as the plank, the side plank, pulling motions, whether it be a pull-up or a row, pressing, vertical or horizontal. And now we're talking about planes of motion. Someone want to describe that one a little bit?
Yeah. So, 3 planes of motion: sagittal, frontal, transverse, frontal, also known as a coronal plane. And essentially, the body moves through a 3-dimensional field of space. And there are specific exercises. Take, for example, let's say a narrow grip row, like a seated narrow grip row. So the palms are facing each other, elbows tucked in. That's a very sagittal based movement. So it's straight forward and straight back. You have a more of a frontal plane movement, which is that side to side movement. So let's call it like a lateral lunge would be a frontal plane movement. And then you have a transverse movement, which would be some sort of rotary or some sort of movement that's kind of splitting the body in upper and lower positions and moving along that plane. So we can call it like a cable rotation or something along those lines that's moving through that rotational space. Wide grip pull up or wide grip push up, wide grip bench press, something like that. And so you've got these different planes of motion because the body essentially is not, it's a 3-dimensional, organisms. We're not made to just move forward and back like we do walking all day. And so many of us just move forward and back like we're walking all day. And so we get stuck.
Actually, most people move forward, and we're
right.
We'll just be more quad dominant. Yeah,
that's it. So like we are very sagittal based organisms for the most part, unless we are in athletics that require us to move laterally, rotationally, like again, like soccer, for example, or lacrosse, or something where you're making lateral cuts. Football, and although football is like a very downfield or what do they call it? Downhill type of sport. It's also very like laterally based as well and rotational based. So the only thing I could think of that would, like, for example, I wouldn't train somebody with multiple planes of motion would probably be a rower or somebody on crew who is really only moving through a sagittal plane for the most part. They really are kind of stuck in one position for their sport. So I'm not really going to do a whole lot of much of anything but that with them. Maybe to undo some of the, you know, negative parts of getting stuck into like a static movement pattern, or like grooving that pattern, get them out of that so they don't have to deal with like, any type of, chronic inflammation or anything that could potentially arise from that. But outside of that, I mean, most people should be training through all three planes of motion.
I would actually disagree with that thought process, just because it reminded me of how I see golf pros training their golf athletes to hit with rotation, and I think it's ridiculous. These people already have amazing rotational control and strength. I think the best thing is to strengthen them in a more proximal way, and strengthen them in flexion and in extension and in that lateral planes as well, because that's just going to make you that much more you're going to generate that much more power, because the analogy of firing a cannon out of a canoe, you're going to be able to stabilize to something.
I see what you did there with the rower. I see what you did there.
See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying?
I do, but listen to this.
Firing a cannon out of a rowboat is what I should have said.
So Matt, what are you saying, that you see most golf people train the swing as an exercise to get more rotation?
Yeah, or they'll work on like a rotational core movement. And in my opinion, they're probably so strong at that already. Especially if they're at like an athletic level where they're competing. So I want people to be stronger in their squat, in their deadlift.
I see what you're saying. I would say this. So, and this is what Gray Cook and Functional Movement Systems has done so well. And most recently, they came out with the fundamental capacity screen. And do you guys know what the performance pyramid is? Or maybe you may have seen it. It's essentially 3 different layers of the performance pyramid. The base layer of the pyramid is movement competency. So this is your essentially like your movement health. So this would be like, your SFMA screen. So your clinical screening, like, does this person have pain? Are they healthy? Are they healthy to move? Great. You're healthy to move. Let's move on. Now we're going to see, can you move well? So that's your FMS screening. Can this person actually hit their movement patterns with competency? Great. Now they can do that. Now that they can move well, we want them to move often. So we want to build capacity on top of that. So we get to make sure they can move safely. Now they move well. Now they move more frequently. And then after they can move more frequently, it's not until then do you focus on building more skill in your training. So the skill training actually comes last. It's all about getting the functional movement patterns. So in that regard, we'll go back to the rower. I do agree with you that we do need to be training even a rower who does one singular movement that really doesn't have any variation to it. It's like a forward and back movement. We do need to be training them in foundational movement patterns throughout the whole spectrum. And then we can start to focus on more skill-based stuff on top of that. So I'll use this example since we're talking about golf. You're not going to train somebody to like perfect or even fix their golf swing if they can't get through a bucket of balls on the range without getting tired, right? Yeah. So they need to have even the capacity to be able to hold up before you can start to teach them the skill. So they have to be
Right.
able to like move pain-free, obviously. Like if there's any pain in a golf swing, it's going to alter how they move in the first place. So you want to make sure there's no pain. They have good movement health. Do they have good movement patterns? Meaning, do they have the proper mobility to actually get through the position they need to and come through and swing and finish and rotate properly through the hips and through the thoracic spine? And then do they have the stamina to get through a bucket of balls? Great, they do. Now let's focus on cleaning up the swing and actually the skill of it.
So Matt, you're saying more that most people are skipping early on basic strength principles to jump right to more specificity?
No, none of that. It was just one comment that Urso said, because my rower is moving in one direction, I will not focus on the other planes. And I was saying, well, I disagree. I feel like you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you should be paying attention to movement patterns in all planes. But I see where Mike's going with it. The important part still is if he's got to perform going one direction, we still have to worry about that in the end of the day. And I completely agree with you. There's just that one little comment you made that I just wanted to.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Pick out and disagree with.
I see what you're saying. There could be with something like that, though. I don't know how much you want to dabble with going, into all different types of movement patterns with somebody like that who is very one-dimensional.
No. Yeah, we don't have to dive. I don't want to go off on a tangent too much. I want to stick back to the basics here. We're getting into planes of motion. We just got done with planes of motion, and we're sticking.
I think it depends.
Go ahead.
I'll just say the training age on that, and with kind of going along with the planes of motion is people have to realize most exercises are sagittal in the sagittal plane. So to get out of that sagittal plane daily life, it is very key to people, especially listening, get in some frontal and get rotational aspect, get into that transverse plane into your training programs. I think that's a big takeaway of the planes.
Yeah, and also think about this. There's not you guys don't hear a lot about people who are training in multi-dimensional fields, like, people training with the Viper, as much as people like CrossFitters, people like powerlifters. They're getting injured all the time because most of their movements are based in the sagittal plane. Like, look at most of what CrossFit does. Most of those movements they're doing are sagittal based. I don't really see a whole lot of, transverse movements really, or even hardly any lateral or frontal plane movements at all in a CrossFit kind of, repertoire.
Which if you overtrain that stuff, that's where people get into trouble and range of motion, injuries, all that stuff.
Exactly. So exactly.
People get injured during CrossFit?
Oh, did I say that? My mistake.
I think that's wrong. We should check Google for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to our topic. There's a couple other things that I like to consider when programming, and I want to hear your guys' opinion, and maybe there's some other things you guys like to consider too. And one of them is intensity. I like to understand what days are going to be higher intensity and what days are going to be more moderate intensity. We'll say, instead of Menchie's favorite word, parasympathetic, we'll say aerobic. And then some sort of mobility or recovery process as well. So those are like the three different variables that I like to incorporate into my programming based, besides the movement patterns, the planes of motions. Again, I like intensity as well, aerobic and mobility. Were there any other variables that you guys consider when thinking of programming in a grand scheme of things? Like think about people out there listening. Anybody who is, just thinking about getting into a program for the first time, or somebody who's thinking about writing themselves a new program. What are some other things you guys think about?
I definitely think about, I know you said intensity, but another word I tell a lot of people is frequency. Is not how many times you're going to work out a week, but how many times are you going to hit a certain movement pattern during that week. So say you work out you strength train for 4 days and you want to incorporate a deadlift motion. how, if you take frequency, how often can you add that into your daily routine each day? So Monday through Friday, you could put it in as a double leg, single leg. And that's how I approach a lot of it with people, is so they don't feel like they're doing the same exercise over and over again. If they can add more frequency into their week, they can see strength gains go up. They can see muscle mass increase, because we're also now talking about, the protein synthesis and building up. Keeping a higher frequency, you get more stimulus to the body.
Yeah.
So your specific thought of frequency is like, for example, if your goal is to get better at the deadlift, how many times are you hip hinging or doing that type of movement pattern in your program per week? Is that essentially what you're
Because most
saying?
people will deadlift once or twice a week, and if you want to get better at it, you need a greater stimulus throughout the week, and that's when you can add intensity in, kind of scale back and ramp it up sometimes. But if you get more in, you're going to get more quality work. Your body will respond better because it's going to learn more rather than just doing it twice a week.
Yeah, this goes back to the practice that we talked about, like setting up an intentional practice for yourself, or deliberate practice. I would say, like, let's like think about this analogy. Would a person who's trying to get healthy benefit more from going to the gym for 1 hour a day for 5 days throughout the week, or going to the gym on Saturday for 2 hours and Sunday for 3 hours? Right? They would obviously get more benefit from going for 5 different days for those 5 hours scattered throughout the day. They would get more, there would be much more benefit from that consistency, that frequency, versus trying to like lump it all in one shot. So especially when it comes to like motor learning, as Eric said, and trying to learn a pattern and really become more proficient at a pattern, that's definitely the way to go. Is the more frequency you can do something. So let's talk about that. Like, Matt, one of the things you like to do is mobility, and add that in. I think that for me, depending on what phase of training I'm in, like whatever phase I'm training with myself or with that person, I want those mobility drills to be, or the prep drills to be pretty much the same throughout that phase of training. Like that warm up, that dynamic warm up, that movement prep stuff, that's all going to be very similar, and it's going to be into every single workout. Even if that person has cardio planned for the day and they don't have any strength training, I still want them doing that movement prep, on the mat. It's programmed. It's there for 10, 15 minutes for you to prep the body, get all the major joints moving, grease the groove, and really kind of prime the system, and then go into your cardio. And then your cardio is going to be so much more effective. But what you're doing is your brain is now remembering that sequence. It's remembering those ranges of motion. They're taking them through on a consistent basis. And so, there's results in less pain from that. There results in better movement quality. There's a whole lot of benefit that comes from doing things more frequently versus trying to lump them all in all at one time. So I would definitely agree with Eric on that front.
I completely agree. My point, I guess, was just sort of stimulating conversation to hearing your guys' general thoughts on, and breaking down your brain for how you guys go about programming. But I see what your point is about frequency, and I completely agree with more, or I shouldn't say that, but I do like total body workouts every day. So I think when your goal is to get stronger, get bigger, get leaner, get smaller, whatever it may be, the more that you can do it during the week, more days on than off, the quicker you're going to get results. And the faster you're going to learn some of this stuff.
Because Matt I used to do it, the old bodybuilding split, 1 day's upper body, other days lower body, then upper body pull. And I saw results, but it wasn't until I switched over to more of a full body, more stimulus, that I actually was increasing results more rapidly. I don't know. Did you see the same thing when you kind of switched over?
Yeah, also definitely the bodybuilding split was like a good foundation for me. Back by chest, try, legs, and then I think we had like an arm day, and we had I don't know, maybe we had a shoulder day. I can't even remember, but looking back, that seems like so stupid. But either way,
Well, it's
yeah,
stupid, but it's only
it
stupid
got
if it's what
where
if it's not what you're training
Correct.
for. Like if you're training to get
right, no,
stronger,
absolutely,
if you're training to get
but
stronger by doing 3 by
I
10
I
or
just
3
meant
by
what
12.
was silly is having a shoulder day and an arm day. When in reality, if you're gonna have an arm day, it should incorporate your shoulders. But
Of course,
but I
yes.
will say, answering your question, Eric, yeah, like results definitely plateaued, and then it became monotonous, and then it became really creative for different exercises to target different areas of the body. And yeah, if you are the artist that is a bodybuilder, then by all means, that's how you should be lifting, because that's how you're going to maximize your results for definition and get some of those smaller muscles to show and get that symmetry.
Right, and especially
And
if you're all show, no go. That's another thing
ex-
too. Some people
yeah,
just want to look good. They have not a care on the function.
and that's
But
fine.
Yeah.
That's
even
totally
in the
fine.
bodybuilding workouts, I always advise people if they want to do it, that's fine. Just keep periodization inside of that program. So don't just do the same thing for 4 months. You have to change the reps, the sets, and the schemes every 4 to 6 weeks to really improve on those results. Because there's nothing wrong with the program.
But
I just kind of manipulate the sets and reps.
Hmm.
but the problem with guys like me, and when I say that, I mean guys who weren't born with muscle mass, like a big amount of muscle mass. Like I was 120 pounds soaking wet when I started lifting consistently, and I blew up to like 150, 155. And what happened, all naturally, by the way, but what happened is my body, the motor that I was born with, my cardiovascular system, my heart, my lungs, the capacity at which these channels can dilate to, they're all sort of fixed. And then all of a sudden, I just threw a bunch of more weight on my car. And now I'm asking the motor to perform at this level, and it just couldn't keep up. So I love soccer and still play to this day. And I would notice, like, man, I don't have it in me at all. And it took me a while to realize, like, I need to be lifting in a way that I'm also strengthening my heart, strengthening my lungs, strengthening my reuptake process, my recovery process. And it improved my lactate threshold. It improved my like you said, sort of more functional aspects to what I was doing in the gym and making it translate over to what I was doing in everyday life. Um, and yeah, I got better results because sort of my focus changed. So my results were no longer just about definition and look and size based. They were about performance and still keeping a look, but still being able to, being able to deadlift 400 pounds or squat 315, but also being able to sprint faster than 90% of the people out there.
Totally agree.
Well, let's look at this, right? You kind of like we talked about like where do we start with people, or where should people start if they're just starting a program? We kind of talked about this with nutrition, where a lot of people, their go-to to start to lose weight is to, reduce carbs. That's kind of the first thing everybody goes to. And it's like, oh, magically I reduced carbs and now I'm losing weight. Well, that's because you focused on getting more fat adapted and burning fat at
Yeah.
rest. Well,
Right.
exercise works the same way. It's just burning fat while you're in motion or during activity. So it's really good to be able to burn fat while you're at rest, but it's also really good to be able to burn fat primarily when you're working out. And there's a lot of people who will just go to that, they'll go from like couch to the treadmill and start getting right into like zone 4 or 5, and then they realize why they have chronic fatigue, they're not really losing any weight, and it's partially because they haven't built up that aerobic capacity that allows them to get into a fat burning state from a exercise standpoint, and now they're just burning sugars and carbohydrates when they're working out, and so they haven't really seen the results of their body being fat adapted through physical activity. So in any type of phase, like when I'm starting with a pure beginner and a complete novice to weight training or resistance training, I want to get them to build aerobic capacity, I want to make sure they move well, like we talked about. Do you have any pain? Are you injured? Let's get that fixed first. Then let's make sure you can move well. And then once you can move well, let's start to really build up your endurance and your ability to move under load for a long period of time. And then from that point is where we now start to step up. Let's throw more weight on the bar. Let's focus on getting stronger. Let's focus on increasing your power output. But underlying all of that is your aerobic capacity. You can call it, work capacity, aerobic ability. But it really is that kind of underlying thing. And if it doesn't exist, if it's not there with somebody, you're not going to burn fat as well when you're working out. You're
not going to recover.
You're not going to recover as well. You're not going to be able to, get your lymph moving, through your system. You're not going to be able to get good blood flow, good circulation. You're never really going to, maximize your potential unless you can start with that aerobic kind of base. And so a lot of people skip right past that. And I think that's a big mistake. So I always focus on developing that first and foremost. And then what people end up feeling is, like, before anything, like with some of my clients, like within the first, like, I would say 4 weeks, I told them, like, you're not going to see massive, like, body changes in these first 4 weeks. You're not going to see a whole bunch of weight fall off. You're not going to see like your whole body transform and all these muscles popping. But what you are going to see is you're going to be able to get through a lot of these sets with a lot less recovery time. You're going to recover faster. You're going to have to take less breaks. You're going to feel less winded. Your endurance is going to pick up really quickly. And I try to like manage their expectations and let them know this is probably one of the first changes you're going to see. So be ready for it. And then when it comes, because it always comes if you train properly that way and build that capacity, that's when you can point it out and say, look at how much quicker you're recovering and ready to, bounce back up into this set. Look at how much more work we got done this week versus 2 weeks ago. And so it's another way for people to kind of measure their progress as well. You as a trainer, and then just them feeling something that is actually tangible.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. And that's where I was kind of going with that aerobic conditioning, was that, you have the movement patterns we talked about. You have the planes of motion we talked about. We have intensity and frequency we talked about. But then that aerobic conditioning is going to play a huge role in the way that you progress through your program. And it doesn't have to be something ridiculous. It doesn't have to be crazy. In fact, I prefer people to make their aerobic conditioning something that they actually like to enjoy. And I much prefer it to be something that they do outside, whether it's mountain biking or trail running or a long hike, whatever it may be. I'd rather it be outside than in the gym. But it has to be in every single program.
Well, you could even do it with circuits.
And that's,
you could even do
what was it?
Yeah, you could do it with weight training.
Just body weight, low intensity circuits, but keep the heart rate elevated for anywhere from 20, 30 minutes. You build that aerobic base. And that's what a lot of beginning programs that I've written or, studied or tell people is get some sort of circuit training in to just get a aerobic effect throughout the whole program. So you're not just starting off trying to lift heavy and you don't build that base and then you crumble and fall once you get.
So one of my favorite workouts to do on an off day when I just don't want to really pick up any weights or I don't really know what to do that day if I'm like between programs is it's part of the Murph workout from CrossFit. Here I go. But it's but listen, shut up. They're 3 of your favorite exercises, Matt. Pull-ups. It's five pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats. And I'll do 20 minutes. I won't do 20 rounds like they do with Murph, where you have a mile run on the front and back end of that. But I'll do 20 minutes, as many rounds as I can do. And my heart rate, I'll keep my heart rate monitor on. It'll stay right around like 160 to 165 if I keep moving with no rest through 20 minutes of that. And that's an amazing. So for me, that's kind of like top of my zone 2, I would say, somewhere like right around 165. So I'm still in like a very kind of, low zone, but I'm using strength and body weight exercises to build aerobic capacity essentially. And I cannot tell you when I do that workout, it's 20 minutes and I do a tiny warm up. I may be in and out the gym in 30 to 45 minutes. I feel amazing after doing those workouts and I don't touch a weight. I keep my heart rate up the entire time. I feel awesome. The next day, I feel like I am like fully recovered and ready to like lift heavy and crush some weights. So it's really that's all you really need. You don't need to and you could do that from anywhere. You could do that. You could do that workout
And you could
literally
take
anywhere.
that workout
So
and you could make it higher intensity. You could increase, you could decrease the time, but increase the speed of going through that. And you can train differently. So you can take one workout and make it aerobic, make it high end aerobic. And then once you're out of that, you can make it almost like, hey, we're going to use this as intervals, which is great because I think people think, oh, I have to do 20 different workouts. No, you can take one workout, manipulate it, and change it to what your goal is for that phase.
absolutely. You could take one exercise. Take, for example, a push up. You could make a push up a power exercise. You could make a push up a strength exercise. You could make it a endurance exercise. Or, I mean, you can make it a conditioning exercise depending on how you load it. Like if I'm going to do like 3 to 5 plyo push-ups, it's a power exercise. If I put a sandbag on my back or load myself up with bands and do 5 push-ups and I can only do 5, that's a strength exercise, right? And so it all depends on, and this is what I mean, like going back to what we talked about, there are fundamental movements patterns that should always be in our workouts no matter what. So like I'm always going to have some sort of push up or upper body horizontal pushing exercise, but I'm not going to vary, like I'm not going to do all these crazy different variations of this exercise, but what I am going to do is load it differently and train it phasically, depending upon what I'm doing for those 3 to 4 weeks.
And all that
phase.
is just keeping programming simple, changing slight things and just getting a different response for the body, which I think most people should keep it simple and change that rather than try to get it crazy in depth with variations, all this stuff.
Yeah, well, why don't we talk about the effectiveness of like phasic training, get into some of that, like going through different phases, like staying in endurance for 4 weeks and then moving into strength for 4 weeks and then power for 3 weeks or whatever.
Which I don't
Let's
think a
chat
lot
about
of
that a little
people.
We don't really have a lot of time left, and
Well,
maybe on another podcast we can dive
you
into
guys are
that. But
just
I was
shooting me
actually
down. Dang.
we are shooting you
Damn.
down because you've also been not staying on topic. You've just been going off on tangents all day.
Oh man.
But we've been
fired.
we've been
You're fired.
pulling you back down.
You're fired.
We've been anchoring you back down. But I want to spend the last couple minutes, and I want to hear how. We don't have to hear about how you decide when to progress or regress, but I want to hear how your program looks Monday through Sunday. Let's start with you, Mike Urso.
Well, typically I'm 4 days a week, 4 to 5. I will do a 5th workout if I can get it in, but mostly I work out 4 days a week. I'll do Monday, Tuesday, mostly take Wednesdays off, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays, and then either a Saturday or Sunday I will do like a body weight only type workout, pretty much like that 5, 10, 15 that I said is a good one that I throw into the mix. So that would be basically like my setup, and it's a lot of times it's like push pull, day off, push pull again. So I'm actually working the full body most all days. I basically have 2 full rest days, or like 72 hours between each like pull workout and 72 hours between each push workout.
And do you change it up often? Do you change the push and pull scheme up, or do you kind of just change the exercises up with that?
So I don't change the exercises too much. I have like a core set of exercises that I really use for the most part. I will change the loading schemes. I will change like what quality I'm training for. So I may focus on strength for like 4 weeks. It depends. If I'm working on power stuff, I only do power for maybe like 1 or 2 weeks. I notice that my nervous system can't handle doing it for that much longer. And I will start to get like fatigued more after 2 week time frame. But I really I was using Volt Athletics quite a bit. That app we were talking about that basically runs me through phases. I have noticed myself that I can get a good 3 weeks in on one program before my body really starts to adapt to it very quickly and stops, not making progress, but I don't feel the challenges as much through those same patterns and loading schemes. So I usually train for about in 3 week phases for the most part.
Yeah,
I found that over years, like of experimentation, that's been the most effective
interesting.
route for me to go.
I'm usually a 4 week. I tried 5 weeks. And I feel like I get the same feeling that you get with power. You kind of like taper off. You feel stale. And I kind of have a theory like 1 to 3 weeks for power with me, and then that fourth week I feel just like I'm not getting where I would be. But for anything over 4 weeks, depending what phase I'm in, I need to switch it up and train something different.
And what's your weekly layout
So
look
on
like?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm strength training, and then I'll throw in conditioning. My Wednesday is a straight conditioning day, metabolic work, and then I'll throw some in conditioning on Monday and Friday too. But if I'm going heavy conditioning phase, I'll do conditioning every day, and then the weekends I shut it down. I'll go out for like a bike ride and stuff, but just let the body and the system recover. But I do full body
Nice.
every day, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But just like you, I keep it to my exercise that I like. Every phase I'll throw in one exercise I should be doing or need to get better at. But I pretty much keep it to, 8 to 10 exercises a day and keep it very similar. And I just manipulate the reps and sets.
Yeah, and I shouldn't say I don't work out every day. I lied. I do some movement every single day, whether that's like getting down on the ground and doing yoga or some sort of mobility work. But I also do body weight squats every single day, 7 days a week. Every single morning when I wake up, one of the first things I do is like I drink a glass of water, but then I do like my push up. I do 10 push ups and 15 squats for 3 rounds. So I do like at least 45 squats every single day, like first thing in the morning. And what I found is like just because I pattern that every single day, my ability to get down into a deep squat position when I am actually training in the gym under load, because I've done so many bodyweight squats, I've like my body just knows it could sink right down into that position with such ease.
Isn't that the best feeling?
My mobility's cleared up. It's amazing. Like, and I can drop into a bodyweight squat right now, and I'll just sink right down, and it's because I've just patterned it.
And you could probably
every
just
single
sit there
day.
and like read a book or do this podcast.
Have you ever done the 10-minute squat test where you actually just sit in a deep squat position?
I've never done
for
it,
10
but
minutes?
I sit in that position all the time.
It's hard. I challenge you to a 10-minute squat test. So what you're probably going to feel is the front of your shins, like your anterior tibialis, just on fire, on fire. That's where I feel it. But yeah, give it a shot. Tell me what you feel. I want to hear what you guys have to say next week.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm always kind of moving around. For me, it's like bike riding.
Yeah.
If I'm bored, I'd say bored, but if I'm not doing anything and I'm just hanging around, I'll take my bike out and just ride. So I'm getting kind of physical activity, something. It's just not in the weight room, hitting the weights, grinding every single day. Which
yes, it breaks up the monotony.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to get out of that kind of routine. Or I'll even take
adults
I'll
need
take
to play more
weeks
for sure.
Where I might just I won't do heavy weights, but I'll get out, I'll ride bikes, I'll kind of go for runs, I'll do sprints, I'll do everything but heavy or really weight training. And then I come back the next week and I'm like, wow, I feel great, refreshed. My body feels so much better than if I just kept grinding through it. So definitely people out there, take a week at a time and just do activities, do sports, get a workout effect through other modalities.
Yeah, unless you're only sitting on the couch, then in that case, get your butt up and get moving.
Because sometimes they'll say, "Oh, don't do anything for a week," and you can't say that nowadays because people will just take that with a grain of salt and roll with it. But back in the day, they used to be like, "Oh, deload, don't do anything, just relax." For me, I can't do that personally. I'd get back and I'd feel stiff, I'd feel just lazy. I don't know.
Well, I've gone on like vacations before and have not worked out the entire time, but I was doing like activities, like you said, like I'd be hiking or I'd be walking a lot or doing some physical activity. But I've taken full weeks off, and you're exactly right. You go back into the gym like a week after not touching a weight or doing any kind of exercise. like that would be a training exercise. And it's amazing how much better my body feels. I feel completely refreshed, and like that stimulus that I wasn't getting before, like that pump I wasn't getting, or that like little bit of soreness that makes me feel like, oh, I did something there, to create some sort of adaptation. That finally happens again where I hadn't had it for a while. So you're right. You do need to take like those weeks off at sometimes every couple months.
Yeah,
I feel like
I agree. Doesn't have to be too often.
Yeah, not too often. Like, maybe 2-3 times a year though is definitely
especially
well
if
worth
it's
it.
vacation. I went a couple weeks ago, and I still we're walking all over, we're swimming, and I looked at my tracker, and I didn't realize how much exercise I actually got aerobically. I'm like, wow. But
Yeah.
So I think I don't think Matt's coming back. Should we just wrap this up and?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Little unorthodox this week, folks.
Matt's taking a phone call. I'm sure we'll definitely do another periodization because it's just there's so much in depth into it. And I want to get into definitely the phases of it the next time we get into it because that's important.
Absolutely. We'll do a deep dive on a little bit more specific subject within it.
So next week coming up, we have breathing and kind of go over the styles of breathing, what's out there for breathing, why breathing is so important, and what kind of stems from breathing right and breathing wrong, which most people we assume don't know how to breathe right or are breathing in a position that is not optimal for performance.
Or don't even realize that it has such a large impact as it does. Crazy. That's what we'll talk about too.
That's all we got for tonight. Make sure to click subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. We are out.